Hey guys, how's it going? Thank you so much for joining this one. This is going to be our session 2 of YSCSS, Security Specialist. Okay, so I think we can just keep going, all right? Now, in the previous one, we've already talked about the, basic security enhancement and also the, security rules, right? The security settings, like the static rules. I'm sorry, the static defense rules, right? So, anyway, we still have something left. So we're going to figure them out in this one. So let's keep going. Now, the first thing I'm going to talk about here, I think we're going to talk about the security settings, back to security rules here, and it's going to be outbound call frequency restriction. This is the thing we left, right? So have a look. What is the outbound call frequency restriction? Well, this one, to be very honest, the configuration is very easy, but this one, it helps a lot, especially when you truly care about the security on your system for external calls. Because I remember in the previous one I just mentioned, one of the biggest threats, on our P-Series system is going to be top fraud. And mostly those top fraud will be something like international calls, external calls, right? So if you really care about the security, once again, then you really need to enable this. You really need to set a couple of rules here to enhance the security. Let's take a look. All right. Now, first thing, as you guys can see here, we got a default rule here. And this default rule, you guys can see here, default extension, outbound call frequency, and that's just the default rule. And this one, it works for all of our extensions, first of all, and you can see number of calls is going to be 5. Time period will be 1 second. So that's it. So for every single one of our extension users, if they want to make an external call, then they're supposed to make sure it's under this rule. All right, like if I try to make 6 calls during 1 second, definitely that will be a top fraud. It will be a top fraud action on the system. For the PBX, right? So the PBX will treat it as the top fraud action. So I'm sorry, I'm just going to drop you in the restriction. Okay. So about this part of configuration is pretty simple. You can just go click on add there and name it. Once again, whatever the rule is you want to configure in the future, just like I said, you might probably create a couple of rules there, not just 1 or 2, maybe 10, 20, who knows, right? So you will need to name it, make it clear. And then go click on add here. Add a particular rule for this one. All right, so number of calls, how many? Time period, what time, all right? So you can just add it over here. It could be seconds or minutes, depends on you. All right, so this is going to be the outbound call frequency restriction. Now, once again, what if, let's say this. What if one of our extensions just made so many external calls and he just get himself being blocked? How can we, unlock this guy? Well, same thing like I mentioned in the previous one. We can just back to extension settings, find that particular extension. Now, for example, let's see extension 1000. You go click on edit and you can go check on security. Then over here, you can see this call restriction. So you can just disable outbound calls. All right. So that's it. So this is definitely the result. Like I said, if this extension, he just reached the, outbound frequency restriction there, then he will actually get himself be blocked. Okay. Okay. So this is the first thing. Now let's keep going. Now, next thing, I guess we will talk about security settings. Back over here, take a look. Security settings, mostly these settings are really easy, but it helps a lot. Let's take a look one by one. For example, the first one, security options. You can see the first one is going to be disable auto defense. Well, usually we just don't suggest you guys to do this. All right, please don't disable auto defense unless you have a special requirement. Now, maybe you have some particular defense mechanism on your router, but usually we just don't suggest you guys to disable this. All right. Then number 2, disable extension registration defense. Once again, we don't suggest you guys to do that, but if you truly want to do it, you can just enable this one here as well. Then the next one, drop all but accepted IPs in static defense. Be very careful with this one, guys. This one's very interesting. I mean, first of all, what I want to talk about here is you are supposed to be very clear with your logic. All right. When you try to configure static rules there, when you try to configure this one. All right. Because check this again. Drop all but accepted IPs in static defense. So back to the security rules here. You know we have static defense, right? So you can definitely create so many static defense rule there. Right? You can create so many static defense rules there, and those static defense rules usually are going to be something confirmed by ourselves, right? For example, I just create a very particular one. The action is going to be accept, right? For example, like this. Now, if I back to security settings, I just enable drop all but accepted IPs in static defense. Well, the meaning is the P-Series system, this system will only accept all the actions, which are confirmed by your static defense, which are accepted by your static defense. Well, as for other actions, requests, anyway, we're just going to drop all of them. That's it. So if I enable this right now, I can't even log into the system anymore. So that's why I said you guys need to be very careful with this one, all right? Unless you figure out what you're supposed to do, what you want to do there. Otherwise, don't enable this, because if you enable this, you can't even drop yourself out of the system, and you won't be able to log into the system again. All right, so be very careful with this one. And the number 4, that's the one. Drop IP ping request. This one's easy to understand. If you enable this one, then, well, you are just not going to be able to ping this particular PBX in the future, right? So that's it. That was all about the security and options. Now let's keep going. Part 2, console SSH access. For console access or SSH access, usually we don't use it. Because usually we are going to be able to log into the system, right? Unless we have a serious trouble, some big damage on the system. Otherwise, we don't use this. So the console access, it's, I guess you can take your PBX, just give it a check there on the interface, on the backside. On the backside panel, you can see there's a particular interface, which is going to be the console interface, console port. So, like I said, if you truly got a big deal on your system, a big damage on your system, you can't even be able to log into the system anymore with the web GUI, then you have 2 options. Option 1, you can take the console cable connected with the system directly, connect with the hardware directly, so you can log into the root, right? So that's option 1. Another option is we can use the third-party tool by SSH access. So that would be option 2. If you want to use the SSH access, you guys can see here we got the SSH port, which is 8022. That's the default SSH port. So you're actually going to use this port with the third party, which is PuTTY. You're going to use that one, that particular third-party tool to let you in the system. All right, so that's the option 2. Option 1, once again, like I said, you're just going to use the console connection. So you will see the console password, you will see the console account. This password, by the way, is random. So for security reason, you can just change the password. All right, it's just random. All right. So this is going to be the console and SSH access. But once again, like I said, usually we don't need to use this unless you got a big trouble on your system. You can't even be able to log into the the web GUI anymore. Then you might probably use this. Otherwise, we can still use the web GUI log in, right? Like what I'm doing now. For basic level troubleshooting, we can just log into the system directly. All right. Now, let's keep going. Okay, let's keep going. Next one's going to be certificates. So for certificates, here's the thing. You guys do remember in session 1, in the previous session, I mentioned something like a security alert on your browser when you log into the system for the first time with the default IP address. Still remember? I just mentioned we're using HTTPS, so you will see there's a security alert which tells you the access is not secured. Well, because we're using HTTPS, this is the first reason, and the second reason is we don't have a certificate. All right, because for browsers, right, for most of our browsers, especially like Google Chrome, they're requiring for this certificate if we're using HTTPS. But this is just a hardware PBX. Once again, it's not a website, so we don't have a certificate. Now, if you want to get a certificate there, that's fine. That's totally okay. You can get a certificate from third party by yourself, but pretty sure that's not a free service. You're supposed to purchase the certificate additionally. Well, the thing is, if you have that certificate, you want to upload it on the system. Here's the place. You can just go click on upload if you have that one. Now, once you upload the certificate on your system, good for you. You just get this one. Next time, you can log in, and I'm pretty sure the security alert, will be disappeared. Okay, so this is going to be certificates. And next one, allowed country IPs. Okay, for this one, guys, be very careful. This one, it's a really awesome feature, to be very honest. It's so good. It's really awesome for security enhancement, but you guys need to be very careful with this, all right? Why? Give it a check here. Now, first of all, if you enable this one, enable allowed country or region IP access protection, all right? Then the next step is you're going to make your selection, right? You can select some countries here, right? Different countries means different IP addresses from different countries. As we know, public IP addresses are totally located, right? Located with some particular, geographical location. Like if you use a particular IP address, a public IP address, we can tell where are you from. I mean, we can tell where that IP address is from, right? So for security reasons, sometimes we might use this feature because for hackers, sometimes, for those crazy guys, they want to do something bad on the network, but they don't want to show themselves, right? They don't want to expose themselves. That's why they call it hackers, right? They're not like some ordinary guy. They just show the whole world, hey, this is who I am, and I want to do something bad on your computer. No, that's not a hacker, right? A professional hacker will never be exposed, right, in the public. So they just try to use different ways to hide their IP addresses anyway. For example, like if a crazy guy, he's in China, but he tries to log into my system, but he's not going to expose his IP address. So what he's do is he's going to try to change his IP address, right? Absolutely. Use different ways. There are so many ways to change your IP address to hide your actual IP address in the public network. Anyway, we're not going to talk about this. So the thing here is, we can just make this particular IP protection be more specific. Like if I enable China only, well, I'm sorry, next time if your IP address is not located in China, you're not going to be able to jump into my system. You're not going to be able to register on my system, to log into my system, to access my system. That's it. Well, but the reason I mentioned you guys need to be very careful with this is make sure if you want to enable this particular feature for some let's see, a couple of regions, all right? Make sure you're going to select the place where you are right now, all right? For example, I'm in China now. So what I'm supposed to do is I need to select China first. Otherwise, once I enable this, I can't even be able to log into the system because I'm in China and I just, I didn't enable China in the list. So obviously, I will get myself be kicked out. So that's why I just told you guys, be very careful with this. Okay, so this is going to be allowed countries IPs. This is more like an IP address protection. All right. Now, next one. Allowed countries codes. Okay. Now, country code, this is more specific. IP address is just for IP, a particular IP address for network connection, right? For network issues. Security on the telephony system, then we also need to talk about the security for the communication, now, which is going to be country codes. As we know, I mentioned several times, one of our biggest threats on the telephony system is always going to be the toll fraud, and especially for international calls. So, if you truly care about the security, you don't want to have any crazy things happens in the future. And besides, you don't even have any requirement for international calls by yourself. That's okay. You can just enable country code here. Enable the country code limitation here. So this rule is like if I enable a couple of country here, then that particular country code is allowed for making an external cost. In other country, for international call, definitely we're supposed to enter the country code. Without country code, you can't even make an international call. That's it. So if I enable this rule, like I just enabled China, all right, the next time someone tries to use my system for an international call to United States, you're not going to be able to do that, right? Because the country code I enabled here is 86. That's just the one in China. And as for others, I'm sorry, you can't be able to use it. So this is going to be allowed country codes, okay? All right, now I'm going to keep going. So let's just keep going. So I think that was all we have about the security settings. Now, next one. Let's just get back to system here. I think we still have something left, which is going to be service ports. So have a look. Service ports, to be very honest, we don't need to change anything here. Usually we don't need to change anything here. This is just like a place for you to check all the default ports, like HTTPS, HTTP, SIP UDP, SIP TCP, anyway. So if you want to make port forwarding or you want to configure something for remote access, you want to figure out the port, you can go check this place. Now, for security reasons, sometimes we might probably need to change the port. Now, for example, like HTTPS. Well, if 8088 is globalized, let's say, if P-Series system, this port, HTTPS, it's globalized. Well, for security reasons, I don't want people to log into my system directly. I want to make it be a little bit complex. So I can actually change the default HTTPS port here, which is 8088, to something else. The next time you won't be able to log into my system by using HTTPS 8088 directly. All right. This might be a little bit tricky, but once again, like I said, unless you have a special requirement, otherwise you don't have to do this. You can basically just keep what it is there. All right, keep the default one. That's totally fine. All right, for this part. But once again, like I said, this page is kind of like the place for your checking. All right, if you just want to check what is this port, you can go check on this place. All right. Now, let's keep going, guys. I think I'm going to talk about the last one in today's session, which is going to be Yeastar FQDN. So, this is the thing. This is the RAS, all right, Remote Access Service, which I was mentioning in the previous session. Let's talk about this here. First of all, what is Remote Access Service? I'm going to give you guys an example first. Without remote access service, if you want to log into your PBX remotely, let's see for remote working, for hybrid working, anyway, you're staying in your house, you're out of the office. All right, the point is you're not in the local area network, you're not in this environment. So what now? Well, the traditional way for us to do it is, it's very traditional, guys. It's called port forwarding, which means we're supposed to make our PBX being accessible in the public network. Well, here's the deal. The PBX is a network device. It's going to be deployed in the local area network totally for security reason, right? We got a particular private IP address deployed on this PBX. So for the local access, that's fine. We can just use this private IP address to jump in, to make a call, to register a phone, to create a SIP trunk, anyway, right? That's usually what we did. However, for the remote access, for remote registration, for remote connection, things will be a little bit complicated. Well, because remote connection means you're going to go connect the system. You're going to go register the system, or you're going to go access the system through the public network, not the local area network. So that's two different networks. First of all, you're going to go find this particular device through the public network. And step two, you're going to go jump into the local area network to get this particular device. So usually, as we know, for business users, we're going to deploy the PBX behind the router. And the router is going to be the network device which connects two different networks, right? On the one side, it will be the public network. On the other side will be the local area network. So the router can help us to communicate, right? To realize the communication from the inside to the outside, or from the outside to the inside, right? So the port forwarding is exactly a very important step for helping us to make our PBX being accessible to the public network. So what's the port forwarding? That basically means we're going to forward some particular ports, some service ports on the PBX to the public network. All right, so the configuration usually is based on the router, right? So on the router, we can configure the particular public IP address, which is the one you get for your office, for your entire office, right? The very specific, very particular, static public IP address. And then you will just need to forward a particular port on your PBX to this particular public IP address. And simultaneously, you will also need to enable something called NAT on your PBX to make sure the communication will be okay. All right, the PBX will be able to get the data packets, the any kind of request sent from the outside. That's it. So this is the whole process. I just simplify this. It's really tricky, guys. Not that complex, but it's kind of a little bit tricky for most of our customers. And besides, this is not so good for security because you know the truth. The truth is, whenever you make a port forwarding on the router, right, that just basically means you just open a particular port. All right, you just open the door on your PBX. You just create this, totally, open connection, open tunnel to the outside. So which basically means anyone out there, if he or she figures out the particular public IP address you have there with the port, all right, the port you map it on your router. If they know this, they can access your system anytime, anywhere, right? So this is the threat, believe it or not. That's just a reality. So here's the deal. Now for security enhancement on the P-Series system, we get something called remote access service. What you're supposed to do there is you can simply enable the remote access service by subscribing our plan. Enterprise plan or ultimate plan, whatever, you get the remote access service. And then you just go click on Yeastar FQDN. All right. So this remote access service is actually provided by Yeastar Remote Access Server. And that server, guys, I'm sorry, that server is really important because that's exactly the thing which creates the encrypted tunnel for your, remote connection. For the communication, once again, like I said, the same example for the communication from the inside to the outside or from the outside to the inside. But this time, you don't have to open any port there. You don't have to map any port on the public network. You don't even need a particular public IP address, right? The only thing you need there is just make sure your PBX has the internet access. That's the only thing, all right? As for the port, you don't need to open it, all right? So the router can just close the door, right? The router can totally close the door. I don't need to open the door for anything there. Well, as for the communication tunnel, it's fully created by this remote access server, all right? So we can simply enable FQDN here, all right? And you guys can see here, fully qualified domain name. This is something you're supposed to configure by yourself. Now, for example, I'm from Yeastar Training Team, so I just name it as Yeastar Training res.yeastar.com. And the res.yeastar.com, that's just the FQDN. There you go. So this particular domain name is provided by Yeastar, and you don't even need to worry about the domain name. This encrypted tunnel is just right over there. It's all pre-configured by Yeastar. Now, once you enable it, and this tunnel, a service, it's just available for you, and the tunnel is just right over there. And as for anyone out there, when they try to log into your system, doing something crazy, well, yes, we can tell them you can give it a try there because pretty sure you can do nothing there because this is the encrypted tunnel. You don't have the IP address, all right, because we don't have the IP address. You don't have the port because there's no port. It's fully encrypted. All right. Okay, so not just that, guys. The good thing here is this encrypted tunnel is really I guess we can say this is kind of like a versatile solution. All right. What is the versatile? Let me tell you. Because what you can do with the remote access service, this tunnel is not only for the web access. I give you guys one example. You can see currently I'm logged into the system by using the FQDN, right? This is just one example. Actually, you can take this FQDN for so many things. Another example, take a look. If you want to register an IP field on your PBX remotely, guys, traditionally you're supposed to figure out port forwarding, NAT configuration, that's it. This time, you can take this, guys. Just take your FQDN, copy this FQDN, all right? For the phone registration, you're going to use the FQDN. So this is the first thing, all right? And the second thing is for SIP trunking, guys. If you have a PBX in your office A and you have another PBX in your office B, let's see the branch office. Now, if you want to figure out the branch office solution, two systems, interconnection, you want to figure that out, this time you can also use the FQDN as well. So I will simply need to copy this FQDN for the SIP trunking as well. That means a lot, guys. That means a lot. Totally enhance the security. And it's really easy to configure as well. Okay, let's keep going. What else? Another thing you can use it is for your Linkus. So we have a Linkus mobile client, PC client, right? So if you want to use our Linkus for remote working, for hybrid working, absolutely you're going to use the FQDN. You're going to use this qualified domain name. You're not going to use port forwarding anymore for remote working, for hybrid working, whatever it is, okay? And one more thing, you can even use this for LDAP access as well. So if you have LDAP access, that kind of thing, you want to use it, go ahead. This is also encrypted as well, okay? Now, one more thing, guys. One more thing here is the FQDN, guys. It seems that this is going to be really awesome. It seems that everyone can use it, right? It's just the domain name, right? It's kind of like everyone can use it to log in, to access, right? However, you can make this security be more enhanced. That's it. Give it a check here. So another thing left here is going to be some features. Have a look. We have a couple of them. Number 1 is going to be web access. Number 2 is Linkus access. Number 3, SIP access. Number 4, LDAP access. So what's the point? The point is you can even set a couple of rules here to make this particular, protection mechanism be more specific. Now, if you never do anything here, that's fine. That basically means anyone out there, if he or she knows the FQDN, they can just jump in. They can just log in, right? However, I can make this FQDN be more specific, like this. Restricted account. So if I enable it for administrator, that basically means the administrator will not going to be able to use this FQDN to log into the system. I can only use the IP address instead of this FQDN. Now, as for other users, if they want to use the web client, I'm sorry, you cannot be able to use the FQDN to log into your web client. All right. And we can also enable IP restriction as well. So you can add a particular IP address here as well. So some permitted IP address, they will be able to use it. Anyway, so this is something else we can do for the remote access service. Now for Linkus, it's going to be the same thing. You can just enable this one for a particular IP restriction. All right. Or you can use this one for SIP access, set a particular rule here as well. It could be disabled or enabled. All right. Then just enable, then just make your selection. Then the last one will be LDAP access. It's the same thing. Okay. So here's the deal. This is just something what we can do with the remote access service. Something so good for security enhancement. Absolutely. First of all, let's just make a wrap up. First of all, if I use remote access service, I don't need to make port forwarding. I don't need to make NAT configuration, right? And number 2, I can even do it further for the security enhancement is I can customize those rules here. All right, make it be more specific. Okay. All right, so anyway, guys, I guess that was all we have for this one. Hopefully everything's clear. And if you guys need more information about our security enhancement or more information about our P-Series system, please check on our website, www.yeastar.com, or you guys can also visit our YouTube channel. All right, go subscribe our YouTube channel, please. All right, have a nice day. Take care.